All right, let's just jump right in. I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine you wake up one morning and time itself has changed. I'm not just talking about the hour. I mean the day, the week, the month, even the year. Everything you know about measuring your life is just gone, wiped clean and completely redesigned from the ground up.
Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, for 12 whole years in France, this wasn't some thought experiment. It was real life. From 1793 all the way to 1805, the French government actually tried to do this. They launched one of the most wild social experiments in history. They tried to reboot time.
And this is what it was called, the French Republican calendar. Yeah, a truly radical experiment born right out of the fires of the Revolution. Their vision? A world built on pure, cold logic. Think about it, a clock with 10 hours, a week with 10 days, and a year based on nature, not some dusty old tradition.
So the big question is, why? Why on earth would anyone try to reinvent something as fundamental as time? Well, the answer really gets to the heart of what the French Revolution was all about. This wasn't just about ousting a king. This was a total war on the past. The revolutionaries wanted to completely erase every last trace of what they called the ancien regime, the old world of kings, feudalism, the whole power structure of the Catholic Church. And when you think about it, what's more deeply tied to that old world than the calendar? It's filled with saints' days, religious holidays, and years that are literally counted from the birth of Christ. So this was their plan of attack. And you gotta understand, this was so much more than just changing a few dates on a piece of paper. This was a cultural reset button, a hard reboot. By getting rid of the 7-day week, they got rid of Sunday. Poof, gone. By renaming the days, they erased the saints. The goal, the entire goal, was to build a brand new, secular reality starting from scratch at year one. And what's really telling is when they decided year one should begin. It wasn't with the storming of the Bastille in 1789, which you might expect. Nope. They started the clock on the day the French Republic was proclaimed, in 1792. For them, that was the real dawn of their new world. Of course, as we know now, it turned out to be a pretty short-lived dawn. It only lasted until Napoleon, who was always a pragmatist, came along and said, "All right, that's enough of that," and shut the whole experiment down. Okay, so if you're going to toss out centuries of tradition, saints, Roman emperors, gods, the whole lot, what do you replace it all with? Well, the revolutionaries turned to what they saw as the ultimate sources of truth, pure logic and the natural world itself. And you can really see their philosophy baked right into the names of the new months. Gone were the old names like July for Julius Caesar or January for the god Janus. Instead, they came up with these really beautiful, almost poetic names based entirely on the seasons you'd see in the French countryside. You had Vendémiaire, the month of the vintage or grape harvest, Brumaire, the month of fogs, and Thermidor, the month of heat. It was a calendar you could literally see and feel happening around you. But they didn't just stop at the months. Oh no. To really cut those last ties to the old religious world, they renamed every single day of the year. And this quote from one of the co-creators says it all. The idea was to kick out the canonized mob of saints and replace them with the true riches of the nation. So what did that mean? Well, instead of celebrating, say, St. Peter, your calendar would now celebrate the carrot. Seriously. Instead of a saint's day, you'd get turnip day or plow day. Animals, plants, tools from the farm, these became the new saints. It was this radical attempt to ground everyday life in the real, tangible, rural wealth of France. So you have this beautifully logical, poetic system. It's built on reason, it's tied to nature. What could go wrong? Well, it had one massive flaw. Real people had to actually live with it. And it turns out that a system that looks perfect on paper can feel totally different when it smacks up against centuries of culture, habit, and just basic human nature. And probably the biggest point of friction, the thing that caused the most trouble, was the new 10-day week. They called it a décade, and it replaced the 7-day week we all know. For the average worker, the new math was, well, it was just brutal. Think about this. The new work week was 9 days long. 9. Workers were now expected to work 9 straight days before they got a single day off. That old rhythm of 6 days of work followed by a day of rest and worship on Sunday? Completely gone. You can imagine this new system was grueling, it was exhausting, and people absolutely hated it.
So, yeah, the whole thing just fell apart in practice. The logic that looks so good on paper just didn't work for real human beings. People were exhausted, they were confused by all the new names and dates, and there was huge resistance to giving up traditions like Sunday worship. On top of all that, it made dealing with the rest of Europe a total nightmare for trade and diplomacy. And get this, the supposedly rational leap year rules were so complicated, you basically had to be an astronomer to figure out when the new year even started.
And so, after 12 years, the great experiment was over. Emperor Napoleon declared an end to it, bringing back the good old Gregorian calendar in 1806. He basically recognized that you just can't force a whole new reality on people, no matter how logical you think it is. The revolutionary clock had finally run out of time.
But that raises a question, right? Was it all for nothing? Did any part of this huge radical push for a rational decimal-based world actually survive? Was the whole thing just a complete failure? Well, for the most part, yeah, it was. The 10-hour day, the 10-day week, the month of fog, all of it just vanished, becoming this weird little footnote in the history books. But, and this is the fascinating part, one piece of that revolutionary decimal dream did survive. And not only did it survive, it went on to conquer the entire world. I'm talking about the metric system. The exact same revolutionary impulse that gave us the 10-hour day also gave us meters, kilograms, and liters. So while the decimal clock failed spectacularly, the decimal ruler, well, it succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. And that leaves us with a really interesting question to chew on. Why? Why do you think the attempt to decimalize time failed so completely, while the attempt to decimalize measurement succeeded on a global scale? It seems like time is woven into our culture, maybe even our biology, in a way that the length of a ruler just isn't. What do you think? Let us know your theories down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this little trip through time, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.